So hello, everyone. A very good morning. It's a pleasure to welcome you on this PFC public consultation webinar. My name is Hubert Inhäuser. I'm a technical officer at PFC International, and it's my pleasure to be your host today when we talk about the Slovak Forest Certification Scheme. Our webinar program will be not that crowded, but filled with interesting information about the Slovak Forest Certification Scheme. I will start with a brief introduction about PFC International for those who are maybe not that familiar with the system. And then I hand over to PFC Slovakia, who will then give a detailed information not only about the Slovak forest conditions, but also about the forest certification scheme, what they recently developed. And as I mentioned at the end, we will have time for questions and answers. So with this, let's get started. So PFC stands for Program for Endorsement of Forest Certification Systems. We are an alliance of independent national forest certification systems under the umbrella of PFC International. All of these national forest certification systems are based on PFC sustainability benchmark and international standards. This is a voluntary mechanism promoting sustainable forest management through independent third-party certification. And we are very proud that we are the world's largest forest certification systems and provider of 3/4 of the world's certified sustainably managed timber. On this slide, you can see our global coverage. As of today, we have 49 endorsed systems maintained by 55 members of PFC International, which covers a total of more than 330 million hectares of forest land. So as an introduction to the Slovak Forest Certification Scheme, the scheme was recently submitted a couple of weeks ago for assessment. PFC is about to appoint an independent assessor to carry out the assessment, and the part of this assessment is a 60 days public consultation, which is launched today, the same day when we have the webinar, and we are encouraging all stakeholders and all interested parties to submit their comments by 27th of January, and all these comments which are submitted on this platform, which you have linked on the slide, will be considered by the assessor in the assessment report. And that was it only from my side, because we have our Slovakian system in the spotlight today. And the first time in my career, I'm extremely pleased to introduce somebody who has the same name, so nobody can go wrong today with the speakers. So I'm very happy that we have Hubert Palus from Slovakia here to tell us more about PFC Slovakia and the system, what they developed. So Hubert, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased that I have this opportunity to present our system, and I hope even if we are all participants here, that it will be available for anyone else in the future. So I'm trying to share my presentation now. Okay. So I suppose you can see it and you can hear me well?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Just maybe put your slides on full screen, please.
That's what I did.
Then maybe try to share the window with full screen, because we see the...
That's what I did as well.
Okay.
Okay. I can do it one more time. Okay, yes, it's here. Now?
There we are, yes.
Okay, great.
Now it's good.
Okay.
All good.
So good morning one more time. So it's my pleasure to introduce the Slovak Forest certification system. I was already introduced. My name is Hubert Kaluš. I work as a PFC National Secretary for Slovakia, and actually work to govern this scheme at national level. The content of today's presentation, I would like to say something about forestry context in Slovakia. Then to promote the whole revision process of the system and present the revised scheme. And afterwards, if there will be any questions, I will be glad to answer them. So as for the forestry in Slovakia, of course, this is a very broad topic. So I have taken only some data or numbers. In Slovakia, forest land covers 2 million hectares, which represents over 41% of the total area. We have 3 different categories of forest. The first category and the most represented is category of commercial forest. The main aim of this category is to produce timber, however, also to fulfill all non-productive functions. Then we have protection forest, mainly aimed at the protection of soil and water, and special purpose forests such as recreational forest, spa forest, science, and for scientific purposes, and so on. Also, we have different categories of ownership. What is typical for Slovakia is that state owns over 40% of forest land. However, it manages over 50% of forest. So you can see forest cover on that picture in the corner. Regarding the tree species composition, Slovakia is dominated by broadleaf forest, about 60%. The most represented tree species is beech, and from coniferous tree species is spruce and fir, 23%. I would also like to draw to your attention this slide, which says something about protection of forest land. In Slovakia, over 62% of forest land belongs to one of the categories, either European or national level of protected areas, and Natura 2000 areas we have, or they are spread on almost 30% of the surface of Slovakia, compared to the EU average, which is over 18%. And there is also a national network of forest protection areas, almost 100,000 hectares. So it means that there must be some overlap, and it's over 500,000 hectares of forest land. Regarding wood resources, the total growing stock standing volume is over 480 million cubic meters, which is almost 250 cubic meters per hectare, with total increment annually up to 12 million cubic meters. And according to the latest data, forests store over 500 million tons of carbon. As for harvesting, this is calculated on the basis of the increment and some other indicators. It's over 2 million hectares, and you can see the distribution that is mostly softwood and then hardwood, which is harvested. Why this share is so high for softwood, even if we have prevalency of hardwood or broadleaf forest? It's because of high share of accidental felling, which is in general about 56% at average, but in coniferous forest it's over 80%. So if I could summarize some basic features of the Slovak forestry sector, we can say that sustainable forest management has a long historical tradition. We will see later. And compared to many other, not only European, but also in the world countries, in Slovakia, forestry sector is very strongly regulated sphere by the state. In today's conditions for forest, we can state that most of the forest areas are dominated by forests with suitable age structure, and the whole forests are very diverse, and this corresponds to the diversity of natural and habitat conditions. Those of you who know Slovakia, you know that we have a very big difference in altitude. The forest starts at about 100 meters above sea level, and the upper forest line is 1,600. So, and this is on a relatively small small area. Forestry sector is also characteristic by a very complex system of forest management planning, which is respecting the sustainability principles in the long run. And as you could see, we have very diverse ownership structure, and maybe from the operational point of view, most of the work in forests are carried by contractors at the present time. Regarding the legislative background for forest management, there is an Act on Forest, and this is important to say that this act is valid for all kinds or all categories of ownerships. So it means it applies the same to state forests, to non-state forest owners, and the main aim of this act is, it requires all forest managers and owners to ensure sustainable forest management in accordance with this act. And this is done through the forest management plans and professional forest managers who are responsible for fulfilling these provisions of, or meeting the provisions of this act. Then regarding forestry operations, there is decree on forest management and forest protection and working procedures for forest management, and also all activities in forestry sectors are also governed by the Act on Nature and Landscape Protection. So I would like to say a couple of words about forest management plan and forest management plans, because this targets a couple of indicators in our, or requirements in our revised standard. And many of those requirements of PEFC international standards are already met in this forest management planning procedures. So as I already stated, we have an Act on Forest, and it requires any owner or manager to carry out activities in forest according to the forest care programs or forest management plans. And this is the tool of the state to ensure sustainable forest management. So forest management planning includes on one side the survey of the state of the forest, of all conditions of forest management, and also of production and harvesting possibilities. And based on these surveys, it sets goals and measures in order to ensure sustainable forest management in a long term. Maybe a couple of words about forest management planning itself. As I already mentioned, it plans or it is used for planning management measures. Of course, it monitors and evaluates the fulfillment of all objectives and of implemented measures. It uses the knowledge and experience in forestry and related forestry disciplines, and as a result, then we have forest management plans, which are the final work of this process. Just very briefly to show you what are the mandatory and voluntary components of forest management plan. And on the left side, you can also see that there is a plan of management measures and also different table and graphical plots and tables, also maps, which are used for planning and executing forestry operations. So that would be for the sector. There is also a certification related to this sector, of course. So PEFC certification in Slovakia. PEFC itself has a long tradition. The first forests were certified in 2005. And recently in Slovakia, there is over 62% of forest area certified. It means 1.2 million hectares. And this area is more or less stable in the latest years. This certification in Slovakia is based on regional principles. So there are 4 regional certificates, and in each region, for any forest owner and manager, it is voluntary to participate anytime in the certification process or to leave the certification process. So today there is 263 confirmations on participation in certification issued. Regarding the chain of custody certification, presently we have 118 certificates, and over 120 companies are certified in the chain of custody. So the second part of my presentation is to present you the revision process of this new scheme that was submitted for international assessment. First of all this process was governed and coordinated by the PEFC Slovakia. So it was the third revision process starting in 2019 and finishing this year. And PEFC Slovakia is independent voluntary professional association of legal entities. The main aim is to promote sustainable forest management, to promote consumption of forest-based products as renewable resources, nature protection, and sustainable development. PEFC Slovakia is also a national governing body and PEFC member, PEFC Council member. So you can also see the all organizational structures. So we have association members who vote and decide on General Assembly. Then another executing body is PEFC Slovakia Council or Board of Directors, and this is governed by chairman and vice chairmen. Also, from time to time, we have some ad hoc ad hoc working groups and one permanent arbitral commission and supervisory board. So what was the scope of the revision process? All the revision process was governed by this document, which you can see. It's normative document of the system 002 development, review and revision of FSSC documentation. This was developed according to the PEFC international requirements. At the beginning, we defined the proposal for the revision of the system. So we defined the scope, we defined the way how to identify the relevant stakeholders, how to set requirements for representation of technical committee members, their balanced representation. Also, there was a plan of development stages, expected timetable, and some resources which are needed for this revision. So what was taken into consideration to define the scope? First of all, we have looked at the changes in PEFC international standards and guidelines. We also collected feedback on our system from standard users and other stakeholders. So this is a permanently established point on our website where we collect feedbacks. Then we executed a gap analysis of our documents against the relevant PEFC standards and laws and regulations. And also we check the national forestry and related legislation since the last revision, which took part in 2014. According to the PEFC international procedures, we could either say that our system was reviewed and could continue. However, our General Assembly, based of course on the decision of the PEFC Slovakia Board of Directors, decided to carry out a full revision of the system documents. And it means that actually the 4 following technical documents were the subject of revision. So it was the description of the Slovak certification system, rules for forest management certification, criteria and indicators for SFM, and the requirements for certification and accreditation bodies. This table shows the whole plan or program and timetable of the whole revision. So you can see the individual stages with the responsibilities, also the final versions of documents, and also timetable. At the beginning, we stated expected timetable, and you can see the reality. So it was, as you will see later, it was quite difficult to manage everything during this pandemic times. But we were late only couple of months, and we were still in that deadline we actually had from PEFC International. So the whole revision started in December 2019 and was ended in November, 15th of November this year, when revised documentation was sent for international assessment. So for identification of relevant stakeholders, we use the mapping exercise where we determined stakeholders, stakeholder groups. This was based on the required agenda 21 categories of stakeholders. We identified key issues for each group, and we identified key stakeholders in each group, and also stated and determined means of communication, how to reach them. So out of these 9 categories, we have identified 7 categories. As I said, we also identified the key issues for each category. At the end, we had 88 main stakeholders, out of which 32 were main stakeholders and 41 disadvantaged stakeholders. Actually, all detailed information about this process can be found in our documentation, of course, that is available at our web page. So this is how it looked at the end. It was a very big table, so I'm sorry, you can probably see it very clearly, but we had stakeholder groups, their activities, identification, whether it is main or disadvantaged, and stakeholders in each group. So as I said, we identified 88 stakeholders. Out of each of them, 41, so it means almost half, were from non-government organizations, different kinds, including environmental and NGOs. We had 10 forest owners, 19 representatives from business industry, and so on. Altogether 88, as I said. So how we communicated the start of the process? It started on December 9, 2019. And all this was available on PEFC webpage. We also prepared and distributed press release, and there was a registered mail sent to every main stakeholder and disadvantaged stakeholders, and emails to all other identified stakeholders. So everybody was invited to participate. Moreover, we have a PFC newsletter, which actually touches up to 300 different stakeholders. This was also distributed this way. So what was the content of this public announcement? Of course, there was the objective and scope of the revision presented. We also said what is the access to the proposal for the standards, and maybe the most important part was to invite and to inform all stakeholders to nominate their representatives to the technical committee, and also the possibility that to comment on the standard setting procedures, which are also available. Out of these 88 stakeholders that were communicated directly, and we don't know how many were touched indirectly, but we received 27 nominations or interest from different stakeholders to participate and to be a part of technical commission. And this was considered by board of directors of PFC Slovakia. And as you can see here, in order to respect balance, representation, and multispectral participation, all these nominations were accepted. So it means nobody was said, no, you cannot participate. So everybody who was interested in taking part in this was invited. So we created a very wide technical commission. So far, it was the widest commission we ever had. And we are really very proud, that I would like to stress it here at this point, that under non-governmental organizations, we had two environmental NGOs which are very active in forestry activities in Slovakia, and it's WWF Slovakia and also Prales, which is also an NGO. And except of them, we had also representatives of ministries and also the state nature conservancy. So altogether, as I said, 27 participants. This technical committee met 3 times, 2 times online and 1 time in person. First meeting was held in 2020 in December, where each member of technical committee introduced himself or herself. We presented requirements for revision of documents, role of technical commission, and introduced all the proposal and preparatory draft of documents. All this was given to the members, and on the second meeting in April 2021, the committee worked and considered the received comments. As you can see, we received over 300 comments after this first reading, and as I remember properly, over 80, maybe 85% of these comments were given by 2 organizations, and one was WWF Slovakia and the other one was State Nature Conservancy of the Slovak Republic. So it was a big role for the Commission to find consensus on these 300 comments. So they proposed some way how they will consider each comment. Of course, there was a discussion and somehow consensus on acceptation of final wording. And this was done. And subsequent voting on the inquiry draft was that all these documents were agreed without any sustained opposition to any issue, and nobody was actually against. So we can really say that the consensus of all these people was reached. Okay, these drafts were sent for public consultation. It took part from June to August 2021. And exactly as the opening process of the revision, this was communicated the same way. So we had also registered mail to each stakeholder, all those press releases and so on. So it was exactly the same as at the beginning. From the public consultations, we received 5 general comments from one entity. It is also available on our webpage. All these comments were considered by technical committees, and they agreed that and justified that these comments were already included in the specific requirements of the documents. So the technical committee on its third meeting voted on the final draft, and you can also see that it was voted for without any no votes or without any sustained opposition to any issue. And all this process was documented, and it's available, as I said, on the web page. Formal approval of the technical documents was done by the PEFC General Assembly on 11th of November this year. And now all these approved documents are available on PEFC Slovakia webpage, and also all required documented informations are available. We stated the application date, so it's next year, 1st of November. Also transition period, it's 1st November 2023, and the date of the next periodic review, it's 11 November 2026. So you can see the 4 revised technical documents. The numbers stay the same, but the names, the titles changed a bit. So we have a Slovak forest certification system, description and context, group forest management certification requirements, sustainable forest management requirements, and requirements for certification bodies operating forest management certification. All this revised scheme, as I said, was international for international assessment. And now, just to show you some major changes. First of all, what is the whole structure? You've already seen the 4 technical documents. However, this is not the complete system. The system is complemented by 3 PEFC international standards. So standard for trademark rules, for chain of custody of forest and tree-based products, and requirements for certification bodies operating COC. We use them as translated versions with our own numbering as a part of our system. Then this was the main revision process. However, after we approved the new technical documents, there must be some changes, of course, done to our other documentation, as this was ongoing process with the revision. So there was also revised some normative documents, PEFC logo license issuance, then development, review, and revision of the system documentation, PEFC notification of certification bodies, procedures for investigation and resolution of complaints, and training of participants in the certification process for the application of the system. This is an internal, very important document, because after each revision, we carry on all Slovakian training of all participants about the requirements of new systems. So this is the time we will also use till the next year to go through all the certified users of this system, and we will present them these new changes. And of course, we have some other documents like PEFC Slovakia statute and our quality policy, which states the main objectives and the procedures how quality of certification is ensured. So very briefly, because these documents are available, so what is the main objective of each of these revised documents? So technical document 1001, system description and context, This document provides comprehensive information on the forest and chain of custody certification in Slovakia. So it defines definitions, elements, procedures, tasks, authorities, and relations between the actors who participate in this process. So you can find in this document the description of the character of forestry in Slovakia and also forest management planning, as I introduced it. Then organizational arrangement of PFC Slovakia, structure of our documentation, all normative references which we used for the development of the national standards. So including national and international references, ILO and certification criteria that we use. And credibility and independency of the system is described, process documentation development, forest certification itself, how it will look, chain of custody certification, PFC trademarks, certification procedures, accreditation and notifications, and appeals, complaints, and dispute settlements. So then we have a document 1005 rule requirements for certification bodies. This is according to the PEFC international requirements based on ISO 1721. So this defines additional requirements to this standard, which we require from certification bodies operating forest management certification against the Slovak system. So the structure of this document is or reflects the structure of ISO 1721 standard with additional requirements and with 3 annexes, which is PFC notification of CBs, accreditations accepted by PFC Council, and group forest management certification. Then I will come to the most important documents. Technical document 1002 is group forest certification. This presents minimum requirements of PFC Slovakia for the group forest management certification. So it says something about all the organization of the certification and management of group forest certifications. So there are exactly defined objectives, roles, responsibilities, and procedures, either of certification applicant or the certified entity itself. As for the context, content of this document, there is a context of group certification, and this describes how group organization should look like, describes this organization. It also describes, and this is quite an important change that we made, is understanding the needs and expectations of affected stakeholders. So what they expect from certification, what are their needs and expectations, and how this group is managed using group management system. And then, as I said, there are specific roles for everybody who is taking part in this certification. Also, there are procedures for continual improvement described. So how non-conformity are addressed and corrective actions implemented. And annexed to this document is a sample of confirmation on participation in group forest certification, which is issued to individual forest manager or owner. And the last one, the most important document, of course, is technical document 1003, sustainable forest management. And this set out requirements applying to forest owners, management, and other operators who work in PEFC certified areas. So using exact requirements, it determines management rules, procedures, and criteria how to meet all standard requirements and how to provide the continuous improvement. It also defines the results of important phases of forest management in a way that they can be considered as sustainable in accordance with PEFC certification principles. So also the structure of the standard follows the ISO structure, so we kept to this, and there is an extra annex which we consider that also can be changed from time to time without changing the main text, and it's a list of applicable legislation. And now let me at the end to show you some key improvements which actually are the results of the work of technical committee, and these improvements we also communicate towards the public and towards the sector. So we defined some areas in which we see these improvements and these key changes that were made to the documents. The first one is enhancing citizen participation in forest management, maintaining, protecting, and increasing the area of forest land, adaptation and stability of forests in the context of climate change, promoting close to nature forest management, forest ecosystem services aimed at the future, promoting the free use of forests by the public. And then we also had some improvements in habitats of protected and endangered plants and animals, and maintaining the functionality and resilience of forests aimed at protecting soil and water. And just to show you some selection of individual indicators or requirements in these areas. For example, in communication, we define the requirement that there must be effective communication and consultation with local governments, with local communities and NGOs about the form how SFM is conducted. And also the justified proposals will be incorporated into implementation plans. Within the another area, there is a requirement for expansion of forest area whenever this can add to increasing the economic, ecological, social, and cultural potential of the country. I'm not going to read it all. You have it available. So it's just something that I would like to stress and point out a bit. Regarding the climate change, we have identified two processes: forest regeneration, structure, and natural character of forest. Within the forest regeneration, there is importance on stress on site-suitable tree species and proveniences, and exactly those having a higher potential to resist climate change. This should be preferred. And also to strengthen natural climate positive practices to have structurally diverse, stable, and vital stands. And this is something special for our scheme that we are also very proud of, because we directly promoted the use of close to nature forest management in the conditions of the Slovak Forestry. So, and this is targeted in at least these four requirements for structure and natural character of forest, for forest of high environmental values, for soil protection and water retention regime in the landscape. And in each of these requirements, you can see that everything shall be based on the close to nature forest management practices, or it should be preferred whenever it is possible, or used whenever it is possible. The preference shall be given to these principles of forest management. Forest ecosystem services aimed at the future within the forest. High environmental values such as primeval forest, natural forest with features of primeval forest. These forests are excluded from any management measures. Specific rare habitats shall be managed and with respecting the latest scientific knowledge from research and natural resources, and also traditional practices shall be used to maintain the high natural values of this forest in favorable conditions. And we also strengthen the area of free use of forest by the public, even if this is given in our Act on Forest. We also require each of the certificate holders that forest land and infrastructure shall be made available to the public all year round for recreation, leisure, recovery, sports, and cultural activities. So this would be all from myself, and now if there is time for your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the very detailed presentation. I think you can stop the screen sharing now, and we can allocate time for questions, if any. Until the participants thinking about questions, I just would like to acknowledge the excellent work which was carried out through the revision, which was reflected in the presentation as well. And in addition, just to note that these benchmark standards enable these features, what you mentioned, to promote, to step a bit further and promote close to nature management and public access, and these additional aspects which are considered important at national level. So with this, I just would like to open the floor for any questions. I don't see any, but please feel free to digest a little bit this very compact information, which is a lot of details about the Slovak Forest Certification Scheme. And we encourage not only the participants, but everybody else to submit their comments through the public consultation platform. And since then, I didn't receive any request for questions, so there's nothing else to say, but thank you, Hubert, for being available for the webinar and delivering this presentation. And I also would like to thank the participants for choosing us today for dedicated time for this information. And we hope to see you on the upcoming webinar as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.